and welcome to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. In this podcast, we discuss mystical works of literature and how they relate to recovery. We hope you enjoy today's podcast episode.
This is Buddy C. Welcome to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. Today we have Brian and Drew. Good to have you guys. Today we'll be talking about the 70th verse of the Tao Te Ching and how it relates to our recovery. I want to talk about one benefit that we can offer you. ZoomAAmeetings.com is a nightly AA meeting at 9 p.m. Eastern every night of the year, every day that ends in Y, all year long. This meeting was started the first of the pandemic. Still going strong. Actually, Scotty M, that used to come a good bit to the podcast, we're going to host and co-host that meeting on Sunday nights starting this week. If you're welcome to join us, 9 p.m. Eastern. We're chairing and co-chairing on Sundays, but they have different people every night of the week. And they have good security too. But the link is Zoom AA Meetings, and that takes you directly to their Zoom join link. You just need to be logged into your Zoom account. The Zoom accounts are free. Most people know how to use Zoom at this point, but you've got to be logged in for authentication. There is no password. Hope if you guys ever need a meeting, you can join us sometime. Okay. The 70th verse of the Tao Te Ching. Drew, let's start with Stephen Mitchell, please.
All right, verse 70. My teachings are easy to understand and easy to put into practice. Yet your intellect will never grasp them, and if you try to practice them, you'll fail. My teachings are older than the world. How can you grasp their meaning? If you want to know me, look inside your heart.
Thank you, Drew. Brian, what do you have for us? Derek Land?
Yep. My words are easy to understand, easy to practice. The world cannot understand, cannot practice. My words have basis. My actions have principle. Please, people do not understand this. Therefore, they do not understand me. Those who understand me are few. Thus, I am highly valued. Therefore, the sage wears plain clothes, but holds jade.
Thank you, Brian. We're going to read Jonathan Starr, verse 70. My teachings are very easy to understand and very easy to put into practice, yet few in this world understand, and so few are able to practice. My words arise from that ancient source. My actions are those of the universe itself. If people do not know these, how can they know me? Those who follow my ways are rare, and so I treasure them. Even if they wear the clothes of a beggar, they carry a priceless gem within. Anyone want to open us up with a comment?
Just the first thing that came to my mind, especially with the first half of the chapter, is just not to overthink things. I get stuck in that so often where I just think through my options and through all the possible scenarios. And if this happens, then what do I do? If this happens, what do I do? And that just leads to so much inaction on my part. And then because of my inaction, then I've got even more problems to clean up. Things get worse. And if I just trust myself and go with my intuition, trust that if something happens, I'll be able to take care of it. And it's a little tough to know when to act and when not to act. Sometimes non-action is the best action, and sometimes just acting for the sake of acting is when I get in trouble. But that's another time of overthinking things. Yeah, just trusting myself, trusting my intuition, trusting that things will work out. But that's something that I always need to do a little bit more of, and getting out of my head is usually the best option of all. Just not thinking things to death and actually taking that first step. That's usually the most helpful thing.
Hey, Drew, let me ask you. So, when you're in a situation and you don't know what to do, what do you do?
I will consider my options, look at the things I can do, and if doing nothing is always an option, is this something that needs to be done right now? Do I need to do anything right now? And if I sit still, if I just keep the situation in mind, but not worry about future outcomes so much, but think about what can I do now? Do I need to do anything now? Usually that doesn't take much time to get a pretty clear answer. And if I don't get an answer, then just need to choose something and move on. Just
Or sometimes the best decision you can make is no decision is still
yeah.
not moving forward. Decide. Sometimes that's the hardest thing for me is to just wait and pause
Mm-hmm.
because I think my actions are going to fix something. And sometimes they're move something in a direction, but most of the time, when I look back on situations, my inaction does more to correct it than my action. Now, I'm not talking about just putting things off for the sake of not doing the procrastinating.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying situations that I don't know the right thing to do, I have learned just to wait until I do know. And eventually I know if I'm open to ideas and I'm, like you were talking about, open minded to what's going on. Yeah, that's good.
Everything may already be okay.
Mm-hmm.
You're right.
I was reading Derek Lynn's commentary on the first part, and it says that Lao Tzu's teachings are based on universal truths that people may fail to understand or practice them. This is because many of us are looking for something that is flashy and conspicuous, something that costs money and therefore must be valuable. And something, and here's another part, something that works magically without requiring disciplined effort. To me, that speaks to willingness.
It also speaks to the discipline of not fixing.
Yeah.
The hardest thing for me to do is not try to fix something that's really none of my business.
Yeah, that's true.
I want to read
pause.
the pause. Exactly.
Like Laurie said, she has those little pause buttons through her place.
And one thing that reminds me of what Brian just mentioned is addiction. Doing the discipline of, if I'm in a spot where I feel anxiety and I don't want to feel that anxiety, it's real easy to just reach for a drink or a substance or something. But that's not a cure, and that just puts off the anxiety till tomorrow and makes it worse. But doing the discipline of doing the things in my life that I know help me live a less anxious life, getting into the mindfulness, the meditation, eating healthy, sleeping right, getting some exercise, limiting doom scrolling on my phone, limiting things that I know get me all worked up, get me riled up, doing some activities that require focus, reading a novel, doing some creative work. That's the stuff that takes discipline. And I know from experience that building up those good habits, decreasing the bad habits, it takes work. It's not as quick of a fix as taking a drink, but it is more sustainable in the long term, and it actually helps. It doesn't just put off the anxiety till tomorrow and make it worse. So that's what Brian mentioned. That's what that reminded me of, is the actual hard work of overcoming the things that I've used alcohol and substances to overcome.
Thank you, Drew. I'm going to read. You what?
Nah, I was just going to say, it reminds me, I heard a guy on a podcast that was talking, and he made the comment that things didn't get better until he was willing to come all the way in and sit all the way down. And I was just like, damn, that's it. Until I was willing to come all the way into the room and sit all the way into that seat, it didn't start working. Thanks.
Thanks, Brian. I want to read, I did a interpretation of the Tao Te Ching. You can go to buddyc.org and download a copy if you'd like, or you can buy a hardcover or get the Audible at, a paperback, or get the Audible at Amazon, but you're welcome to download a free PDF at buddyc.org. Verse 70, value the valueless. My teachings are easy to understand and very easy to put into practice, yet few do. My words have an ancient beginning. The affairs of man are by design. People are ignorant of that design, so they do not follow my ways. Turn the light around and surrender your way within, and you will reach your inner treasure. Therefore, the sage values what appears to be valueless, but in reality is the most precious. Yeah. The sage values what appears to be valueless, but in reality is the most precious. My teachings I'm going back to the Stephen Mitchell for us to use as an outline. My teachings are easy to understand and easy to put into practice. Yet your intellect will not grasp them. And if you try to practice them, you'll fail. I thought that's what we were supposed to do, is practice them.
I think it's more the try. If I try to, like, going back to a few weeks ago, the three treasures.
Yeah.
That's what I thought about when you read your last line of the interpretation. The things that the sage holds dear: simplicity, patience, and compassion. And Stephen Mitchell's translation: if you try to be compassionate, if you try to be patient, it's like trying to be cool. If you try to be cool, you're never going to be cool. I feel like trying is more showing people that that you are compassionate, showing people that you are patient. It's definitely not saying don't make an effort, because we've all been in situations where it takes effort to be patient, being stuck in traffic or seeing a huge line at the grocery store when you're trying to check out. But just putting it into practice is pretty simple, really, like the beginning of this chapter says. But if you tell yourself, okay, now be patient, be compassionate, you need to be compassionate, that just sets yourself up for getting upset at yourself if you feel like you're not being patient enough, not being compassionate enough. So just doing it and stepping back and getting out of your head, I feel that's what it's getting at here.
Is it time for a Yoda quote? Can I use a Yoda quote?
Always.
There is no try, just do or not do. Maybe the problem, I was emphasizing the practice, not the try. I think is that what you're saying, Drew, is that the problem is when I'm trying, that's coming from my intellect, that I'm trying to, out of willpower, do this thing, which is how I thought recovery was when I came in. I thought I just needed to learn the magic formula and I could engage my willpower in that direction. Oh, there's some way I need to try harder or try different. There was, but it wasn't the way I thought it was. It was a surrendering within that was the real effort, not the work harder, do better, which is what I thought. I'd been able to do all kinds of things on my own before I got into recovery. Why in the world could I not quit drinking? I just didn't understand that. I was the guy that I've always followed the instructions. When I was a kid, the new pinball machine would come out, right? I would go to read the new to play the new pinball machine. You don't just get in there and start playing. You read the instructions first, so you'll know how to win. Because the goal was to win; it wasn't to play. You wanted the high score, or that was me.
I finally met somebody that reads the instructions.
Well,
I was always, we don't need these.
Oh man, what? Did you get the high score all the time, Brian?
No.
Okay.
Something's wrong with this thing. It's not me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I used to work for an arcade company when I was a kid, go around collecting money. When you had games in little convenience stores around,
Yeah.
Mhm.
I was the guy going around and doing all of that as a teenager. But yeah, I always read the instructions. So they're easy to understand and easy to put into practice if we can set our intellect aside and stop the self effort. It's like my quote from I Was a Pagan by V.C. Kitchen that I like. It said he had to stop the self effort to get rid of his defects and learn how to step aside and let the light shine down. Have I quoted that lately? Have I read that lately?
Not lately. Mm-mm.
Okay, let me find that. We'll read that right quick. This book, I Was a Pagan, was published in, I think, 1935. If you know much about AA history, Bill Wilson was in the Oxford group. But within the Oxford group, they had a businessman's group, which is a smaller group that went out and talked to businessmen about the Oxford group, which was a lot of the tenets of the Oxford group were the beginning of what we have as the steps in AA. But one guy that was in the businessman's group with Bill was a guy named V.C. Kitchen. And he wrote a book called I Was a Pagan and published it in 35. So we know, I'm sure Bill read this. And I know Bill knew this guy, Bill Wilson, who was one of the two that started AA. And this quote, you can see a lot of AA in this quote. These ambitions, hypocrisies, and vices were not drained out when I transferred my belief in one plan or philosophy of life to another. They were not drained out by my making New Year's resolutions, and they were not disposed of by going to psychoanalysts or by going to church. Remember, it's 1935. They weren't drained out by going to church. They were drained out by stopping the self-effort to get rid of them, by letting God take hold to do the job, and by putting God first in life. I had put God first in theory, yet still continued to mean well, but do badly. He kept trying, right? That's the trying from the intellect. That was because I was still trying to run my own life. I had not put him first in living, but had kept my self-love uppermost and had built my scheme of things quite upside down. When I turned things around, however, and put God at the head of the list, when I ceased struggling to pull myself up and stepped out of the way so that his light could shine down to me, when I let him show me how to use my individuality he had given me to accomplish for myself, for humanity, and for him, the things he wanted me to accomplish, then, for the first time in 40 years, things of consequence began to happen in my life. Now, that's page 28 from the book, I Was a Pagan. You can Google I Was a Pagan VC Kitchen, and I'm sure the PDF will pop up. That's how I found it. That's from page 28 in the book. That really is the case, though, right? We step out of the way. That's what our effort, in my experience, my efforts in stepping out of the way. It's not in continuing to try to fix it. It's by stepping out of the way and allow recovery to work in my life. That's totally different. Totally different. So my problem is coming at this from a thinking like I know the solution. I can do this. Ism, I, self, me.
Yeah. If only I put in enough rules for when I can and can't drink, and the times when it's acceptable, and if I can follow all those rules, then I won't have any problem.
Yep. My teachings are older than the world. How can you grasp their meaning? Mitchell says, if you want to know me, look inside your heart. In other words, as long as I think that the solution is external to me, like work harder, do better, if they would behave differently, if only, any sentence that starts with if only, or I should have, or they should have. Anything that I'm looking outside of me for the answer is not the answer. I've got to turn that light around and surrender my way within. In other words, I've got to approach this from an I don't know attitude, an openness to see the solution rather than create or devise the solution. Then I have the possibility of recognizing how this can really work in my life. Yes. So, what are our actions to, if it's not about our intellect and it's not about trying in the way we normally think of trying and effort and doubling down, working harder and doing better, all of that. So, what is our actions? Because it's obvious I can't lay on the couch and eat Cheetos and watch Big Valley reruns. Can't watch the old Western channel all day and expect life to get better. It's not like that. Someone could listen to us and think that's what we're saying. That's still looking outside of us. If we think our lack of effort will do it, if that makes sense. That's all. I'm not looking within when I'm doing that. I'm just doing nothing. It is about doing, but it's about doing something different.
It's about acceptance and surrender.
Yes. How do I do that, Brian? How do I lay down my weapons or my tools?
You have to get to a point where you realize your way's not working.
What was it you said? You came all
There's
the
no
way
telling.
in and said all the way down.
Yeah, I heard that on a podcast. The guy said that basically this stuff didn't start working for him until he was willing to come all the way in and sit all the way down.
See, that's effort, but effort in the direction of stepping out of the way. Kitchen was talking about. You're stepping out of the way instead of trying to make it happen. And the way he saw it was that it was like light shining down, and he was getting in the way of it, and he had to step out of the way so it could shine down, was how he described it. Everybody describes it a different way. They use different words. He said it was drained out by stopping the self-effort to get rid, because he meant well and kept doing badly. He kept trying. So until he stepped out of the way, there was no success with that. And from what I understand from his story, he was an alcoholic that got sober in the Oxford groups. Yeah. For me, the way that works is whenever I'm all caught up in me, if I can just take the shift off of me just a little bit, how can I be helpful right now? Let's say my addiction, I really want to drink. What do I do? First, I stop fighting it, bare knuckling it, just pushing against this thing. Instead, what I do is I try to forget about myself by working with someone else, by praying for someone else I know that may be struggling. If you ever go to a meeting, you got a whole room full of people you can pray for. It's not like you don't know anyone. How about just taking a moment and start praying for them the same way if you were to pray for yourself? I would challenge you to take a week. If you're one of those people who pray for yourself all the time, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm just suggesting an alternative for just a short period of time. Every time you think of praying for yourself about anything, why don't you just shift that and pray for someone else, no matter what it is? Let's say you're praying something for your children. Why don't you pray for someone else's children? Or if you're praying that you stay sober today, why don't you pray for someone else to stay sober today? Make that one little shift for maybe try it a week and see if your life doesn't get better, doesn't improve. That's a real simple thing. I remember when I made that shift years ago, obviously in the South, and we were going out to eat with my sponsor for lunch, and someone next to us was praying over the meal, which you hear quite often in the South. And I was listening, couldn't help but listen. And I thought, gosh, all he did was pray for himself through that whole prayer. I said, I wonder if I sound like that when I pray. And so at that time, I wasn't meditating yet. I was just saying a 5-minute little prayer in the morning, reading my daily reflections and that kind of thing. So I said, I'm going to pray. I'm not going to pray for myself this whole week, because most of my prayer was about me. Do this for me. God was up there just to do what I needed done, right? Okay, I want you to bless my children. I want you to bless my business. I want you to do this. I want you to keep me sober. I want all this stuff. I want you to do for me right now. Yeah. So I was up there praying all these things. I said, let me stop that for a week. And my prayers got really short because I realized all I was doing was praying for me. That was a sign for me that needed to shift. I was years in sobriety. I think I was probably 2-3 years in when that shift happened. And later I realized I already had everything I needed. I didn't, if I was praying for things, it's just me. It was like Job offering sacrifices for his kids just in case they sinned. It was that fear based. By the way, the story of Job, if you read the first of it and the end of it, the first of it, he was praying for his kids in case they sinned. And at the end, he got deliverance by praying for his friends. So it's a good story that reflects a lot of what we learn in AA. Just take the shift off of yourself when you're struggling and see if that doesn't improve. And that's a way for me that I surrender within, is by putting value on what I thought was valueless, which are other people. If I can pray for me, why would I pray for you? Really, that's, when I look back, that's a very selfish thing on my part. And you don't know when you can't. We all need these steps through this. So I don't like to compare anybody else's walk. We all need these things, and it's fine. There's not a wrong with that. It just is. So I told my Christian friends about this that I meet with occasionally. And there was a hurricane coming through, and they were praying. Some of them, one guy had a bunch of relatives down in Brunswick, down on the Georgia coast, and they were praying for the hurricane not to hit their stuff and all that. And I'm like, wait a minute. Wouldn't the Christian thing to do, you know where I'm going, wouldn't the Christian thing to do be pray for it to hit you instead of someone else if it needed to hit someone? And they said, buddy, you're not right. No. But that's what we learn in here, right? We set ourselves aside and we quit trying to fix us, and we focus on someone else. Just see if it works for you. If it doesn't, go back to doing whatever you're doing. Just give it a shot and see. For me, it was a game changer. There's not a time that in life when I'm struggling with anything that the solution is not getting the focus off of me in some way. We got holidays coming up here in the U.S. We got Thanksgiving coming up at the end of this month. We're recording this first week of November. When I have a sponsor or someone I know in recovery, they said, I've got to go to this event. I've got to go see family, and there are triggers for me. What do? I said, first, have a way out to where you're not trapped. So when it comes down to it, you can leave. Secondly, if you feel you need to be there, and you start getting squirrely, or they tell they're all drinking, and it's the third time they've told the same story at the third octave up, then get up and start doing something. Why not clean up the dishes or play with the kids, or not just sit there in it and in your own head? Get out by just being helpful. And you'd be amazed at the times that just one little change works. If I can just be helpful and get the shift off of me, get my focus off of me and make that shift, it works. Yeah.
And those what to do in the holiday situations, I've found taking a kid outside, because the kids have energy to burn, they're bored. Just take a kid outside and just be there with them, and they'll find plenty of things to do. They'll go play with the pecans that have fallen down, or leaves, or anything. And you can watch them, you can play along with them. or take a dog for a walk. If there's a dog around, just offer to take the dog for a walk. And whoever's dog it is going to be happy that you're doing it. So, yeah, animals and kids are good ways to get away from the people who are triggering you, I've found.
And this is for anything, too, not just holidays. I've got a sponsee that his wife and kids, his wife had friends that they like to go drink on Sunday afternoon at the beach. And he said, I'm just uncomfortable doing it. I said, go play with the kids. You're at the fucking beach. Go play with the kids. There's not a better place to play with the kids than the beach. He's like, okay. I said, wait a minute. It's not okay. I said, when you're feeling squirrely, there's nothing better to do. I said, why wait until you're feeling uncomfortable? Just go play with the kids to begin with and enjoy yourself. Don't alienate yourself from all your friends. Say hello and hang out a few minutes. Enjoy. Your kids are young. They're out there playing without you. Just go play with them. I heard from him a day or two later, you won't believe how good a time I had. I said, yeah. I said, did all the drinking bother you? He says, no, not at all. I'm like, right. Mm-hmm. You changed the focus off of woe is me. Yeah. Anything else with this, guys? It's been a good conversation. I think that's all I have.
It's been a good meeting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Setting that intellect aside, thinking we know, and the way I set that aside is by being helpful, by knowing that the solution to whatever's got me disturbed is never outside of me. It's always within me. See, because the only way that I can be helpful is when I am shining that light within, because those actions of helpfulness are what really cause the awareness of what's going on. That's actually the thing that turns within. If you looked at it at face value, you say, well, you're being helpful. That's a solution outside of you. But is it really? Because we act our way into right thinking. So in other words, just like the Lord's Prayer says, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. So even with that, it's saying, we love others. We treat others the way we want to be treated. So it starts with our actions, and then things change within. Same thing. So if it's selfless action, it's going within. That's been my experience. Then I realized one day what used to disturb me doesn't disturb me at all. I'm like, why is that? It's because I'm changing. It's not really that I'm changing because I'm already changed. It's just that my perception is changing. I'm dropping all of that weight of misperception that I didn't know. Then one day I realized, hey, I don't need anything. I'm already complete. Wow. Was I complete this whole time? I didn't know. Was I sleepwalking? That's the way we talk about it. When you're sleepwalking, you don't know what's going on. And as you're waking up in the morning, you're like, oh, wait, it's okay. I'm here. Oh, it's Saturday. Oh, it's this. Oh, it's that. You go through that whole process in milliseconds. But I think spiritually, it's the same process. It's just much longer period of time. And slowly we wake up to what already is. And a big part of that for me is learning to shift to helpfulness when I'm disturbed. Yeah, good conversation today, guys. Thank you.
Hello, this is Buddy C. I wanted to make you aware of several recovery-related resources that I've posted in the episode description. These resources include a list of recovery podcasts, a free sober meditation app, daily recovery email, shared Google Recovery calendars. Hope you put some of these resources to use and have a great week.
Thank you for listening to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends in recovery.